have any action on boards and commissions coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the best
So
writing
we
I've
didn't,
ever done.
that's not on our script.
Okay.
So,
Because there was something different about it.
so I assume it would be in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Very
And
easy
then
to
this
let
is
go
the
of
first
the
one
ego.
where we do consider Jennifer for.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of trouble with voice and with structure and economy, and all of those just went away. But it was because it was such a humbling, and the task was so big. So, thank you for asking us.
Special use permit. That's been signed up. I'd rather that one of the others did. No, I'm not gonna sign up for it.
Yeah, we'll,
Well, we started at 6:30.
Are you signed up for regular public comment or public hearing? Yeah, the mayor will call the name of each person on the list.
wait 1 minute.
One of the speakers. It's for one of the speakers who's talking in public comment.
You don't have anything, do you? All right, good evening. I call this meeting to order. How are you doing this evening?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mr. Wheeler?
Dr. Bellamy? Present. Ms. Hill?
Here.
Ms. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Signer? Here. Ms. Galvin?
Here.
All right. Now we'll have announcements.
This is requested announcement for the voter registration office. Voters who need to register to vote or update their address before the next election have only until October 15th to do so. A voter registered in his or her current address does not need to re-register. Voters may look up and update their registration online at vote.virginia.gov or apply online to register. New Virginia voters who do not have a Virginia driver's license or DMV ID will be prompted to print, sign, and mail the online application so that it is postmarked by October 15th. Registration is available in person in the voter's registrar's office, during business hours, normally 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and applications are available in the City Hall lobby and local libraries. In-person absentee voting is underway through November 4th for city voters in the City Voter Registration Office in the City Hall Annex next door to City Hall. Curbside voting is available in the car for absentee voters who are disabled or who are age 65 or older and have other qualifying absentee reason. Call the office for more information. Voters must show a photo ID when voting in person, just as on Election Day. Voters who do not have an acceptable ID may apply for a free photo ID for voting during office hours in the registrar's office. The deadline to apply for a mailed absentee ballot is October 30th, but that may be too late to receive and return your voted ballot by mail. If you need to be mailed an absentee ballot, apply online now at vote.virginia.gov. Please call the voter registration office at 434-970-3250 if you have any questions or need an application.
Councilor Galvin?
Yes. Oh, do you have some?
I do. Mayor Walker, I would just like to request that we offer a moment of silence for the young man Quinn Brooks, who lost his life this morning in a car accident. He was 20 years old. And could we have a moment of silence for him, please? Thank you. Rest in power to Quinn and Fats, the rest of his family, and all of the little ones who are struggling with this.
Yes, Mayor Walker, I actually have two. The first one comes from our Office of Economic Development, and the City of Charlottesville has been invited to attend the National League of Cities Roundtable on municipal efforts to support parent employment in Washington, D.C. Earlier this year, the National League of Cities conducted a survey of local governments and their workforce development strategies, and in particular, those demonstrating a strong dedication to programs focused on employment for parents. As a result of this survey, the City of Charlottesville was selected to attend the Roundtable on municipal efforts to support parent employment. This peer learning environment will provide an opportunity for the city to share workforce development best practices as well as learn from others. The City of Charlottesville was especially chosen as a best practice due to the continuum of workforce services that it offers. This includes the work of the Downtown Job Center, which is the first point of entry for city residents seeking employment, the Growing Opportunities Training Programs, known as the GO programs, which provide pre-employment training using the jobs-driven workforce development model, and wraparound supportive services that assist with employment barriers such as transportation, child care, and rental assistance. The other cities invited are Jackson, Mississippi, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Las Vegas, Nevada, Walla Walla, Washington, and Grand Rapids. So anybody interested in more information about this, please call Holly Lee at the Office of Economic Development, 970-3117. I have one other announcement or proclamation. And I guess I got this because...
Yeah, if there are any other announcements?
Oh, okay.
No? Okay. So then.
Okay, sure. So I guess I got this because I'm on the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority Board, but anyway, imagine a day without water. Whereas water is essential to everything in life, whereas we need water to make a cup of coffee, fight fires, swim on a hot summer day, keep ourselves hydrated, shower, and bathe, whereas most sectors of our economy rely on water, and without it, the economy would grind to a halt. Whereas while nature provides water, it takes pipes, pumps, treatment plants, people working 24/7 to deliver safe, clean water to our homes and businesses, and then remove and treat that wastewater so it can be safely returned to the environment. Whereas water infrastructure is largely invisible because it is out of sight and out of mind to most people and needs our attention, and whereas investing in our drinking water systems will secure a bright and prosperous future for generations to come, and whereas the staffs of the City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County Service Authority, and Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority have joined to work together to locally promote Imagine a Day Without Water, with each of the 3 governing boards adopting this resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Charlottesville, Virginia hereby proclaims October 10 as Imagine a Day Without Water Day to help Charlottesville residents and Charlottesville water utility customers recognize the value of safe, clean water to our community. Signed and sealed this first day of October 28 by Mayor Nakia Walker.
Is there someone here to accept this? No? Okay.
Thank you.
I have a proclamation, and before this proclamation, I also want to send some love to all of the breast cancers and cancer survivors. As we know, we'll be celebrating all month, so much love to everyone celebrating and all of the survivors. Forget cancer. That's the PG version. So we have a proclamation for Miss Maybell, but I did get a text that she's running just a little late.
Okay. So you want to come back?
Yeah, if we could maybe present it to her after public
That's
comment.
fine.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a proclamation, domestic violence awareness. Whereas the problems of domestic violence are not confined to any group or groups of people, but across all economic, racial, and societal barriers, and supported by societal indifference. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic uses of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse, with the impact of this crime being wide-ranging. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate domestic violence on their own, we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent such violence, support victims and survivors and their families, and increase support for agencies providing services to those community members. And whereas the Shelter for Help and Emergency has led the way in the city of Charlottesville in addressing domestic violence by providing 24-hour hotline services to victims, survivors, and their families, offering support and information, and empowering survivors to chart their own course for healing. And whereas the Shelter for Help and Emergency commemorates its 39th year of providing unparalleled services to women, children, and men who've been victimized by domestic violence. Now therefore be it resolved in recognition of the important work being done by the Shelter for Help and Emergencies that I, Nakia Walker, of the City of Charlottesville, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs sponsored by the Shelter for Help and Emergencies, and to work towards the elimination of personal and institutional violence against women, children, and men. Is there someone here to accept this proclamation?
If we could we still give Shea a round of applause?
Yes.
Someone else?
Okay. All right, so we're going to come back to the last proclamation, and we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Wheeler?
Did you want
Oh,
to
do
do
the-
boards and commissions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I didn't write it.
This evening, the following individuals have been appointed to our boards and commissions. The Human Rights Commission, Olivia Patton. The JMRL Board, Lisa Wolfork. The Planning Commission, Tania Dowell, Gary Heaton, Jody Alejandro, and Rory Stolzenberg. The PVCC Board, M. Chinta Gaston. The Rivanna River Basin Commission, council representative was needed, and that will be me, Heather Hill. And the Sister City Commission, Douglas Mosley.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill, may I add one thing really quickly? Just for everyone's information, we are still looking for applicants for the Charlottesville Albemarle Regional Jail Board. Those applications can be found online. There's one there's one opening available right now for a city rep, so please apply. Again, you can find that online with the website with the boards and commissions. Please apply.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Wheeler.
probably before the consent agenda, we need a motion and second for the appointments to the
Okay.
commissions and
Right.
boards.
I move that those that we have identified be appointed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. It carries 5-0. All right. Now, finally, the consent agenda, Mr. Willer.
Item A, minutes from the September.
Speak about the consent agenda. Are we supposed to have the public having us speak about the consent agenda?
No, it's true. We have to just, this is the first time we have this new order of operations, and so we are going to give the public an opportunity if they wanted to speak about items on the consent agenda, that we would give that opportunity so that they could go before we actually hear the
Sure,
consent
come on
agenda.
up. Mr. Schultz?
My name is Louis Schultz. I live at 1809 East Market Street. Tonight, council is likely to make city spokesman Brian Wheeler acting clerk of council, and I have some grave reservations about that possibility. Paige Rice's resignation is an opportunity for council to make another long-needed move towards transparency and accountability. I don't think that will happen with Mr. Wheeler in that role, and I fear his temporary promotion may become permanent. Despite what the job title implies, clerk of council is a public service job. Virginia's Freedom of Information Act requires council to inform the public of its meetings and to keep accurate records of its proceedings that are readily accessible to the public through its clerk. For years, council has frequently met in secret, often with no notice at all to the general public. Lack of online records has made it impossible to know when special meetings have taken place or what was discussed at them. Since 1972, the city's charter has required that at every regular meeting, the minutes of the previous regular meeting and all intervening meetings be read, approved, and signed by the presiding officer. As far as I know, that never happened with Ms. Rice's clerk until the meeting after she offered her resignation. On September 17th, the minutes of 13 council meetings dating back to mid-July were approved. That only came after I pressed the issue for months and spoke at 2 council meetings on the subject. Most of the minutes which were approved are still not available online more than 2 weeks later. An untold number still remain completely secret. It took me a month of repeated requests to get Paige Rice and Brian Wheeler to release minutes of council's July 18th, 20th, and 24th special meetings, and it's no wonder. They document numerous violations of the Freedom of Information Act. Long before there was a policy to allow it, council members phoned into those meetings and voted illegally. As city spokesman, Brian Wheeler has acted like a minister of propaganda rather than a source of information to citizens. Once it was clear that I might uncover what had happened with the remote meetings, Mr. Wheeler approached me at the August 6th council meeting to tell me that Heather Hill had phoned in to listen to the July 31st meeting. While that was true and legal, Wheeler's purpose was evident from the fact that he didn't say anything about the meetings on July 18th, 20th, and 24th, when he certainly knew that at every one of them, councilors had voted illegally. Wheeler has never offered any explanation of why Maurice Jones has had $80,000 in zero-interest loans forgiven by the city when his contract didn't authorize that. He has never explained why Jones received any severance at all, since Jones disqualified himself from that by abandoning his contract in July when it doesn't expire until December. In fact, when Rob Schilling first asked Mr. Wheeler about Maurice Jones' severance package, Wheeler refused to provide that information, even though Virginia law required it to be disclosed before Jones left. Thanks again to Rob Schilling, we've had another shocking revelation today. Retired former police chief Al Thomas is still on the city's payroll, making $134,000 a year until July of next year. Yet again, Brian Wheeler is refusing to release Thomas's contract and citing the same bogus privacy excuse that was tried with Mike Murphy's contract before it was finally released. I say enough. Council needs to stop with the secrecy, stop taking my tax money to pay someone to lie to me, and purge this city of anyone who doesn't believe in transparency. Don't give them promotions.
So thank you. Mr. Willer, can you remember the time? So Mr. Schultz, thank you for coming up. Mr. Willer does not intend to apply for the clerk position. Staff, there were a couple staff members who have been willing to be very helpful during this time of transition that we are going through, and he's one of them. So he's not intending to apply for the position. We have our, Mr. Blair working on the minutes and making sure that council is making sure the minutes are attached to, are online and properly updated, and that we are adopting them at the beginning of every meeting, starting the next meeting. So hopefully that addresses some of the concerns that you
Will
have.
Mr. Blair be addressing the issue of why Maurice Jones got a severance package and why he got $80,000 when his contract doesn't authorize that for him? Yeah, Mr. Jones had no right to have that loan forgiven.
Mr. Blair's gonna.
Sure. Mr. Jones's contract did call, in fact, for the repayment of the balance of that loan if the contract was terminated. The council did on July 2nd. There was a resolution that in fact approved an alternative arrangement for Mr. Jones's exit from the city. And based on that, and the way that the contract was written, the $80,000 was forgiven based on the contract from 2015.
You're lying. Okay, Section 17 of his contract, the resolution that council approved was that they ratified the letter that they gave to him on May 21st. That letter was an agreement not to renew his contract. Section 17 of Maurice
Mr.
Jones's
Schultz.
contract authorizes those loans to be forgiven if and only if he was terminated without cause, which did not happen.
Okay, any other comment? All right. Are there any other comments for the consent agenda?
If you're up for discussion of that, I'm up for discussion of that.
No, we
We're
didn't
being
ask
lied
you to.
Yeah, we're being lied to, and I'm not going to take that. Mr. Jones got a payoff that he is not entitled to. That's my tax money, and I'm not going to take that.
So the update that you received from legal is all the information that we have at this moment. I don't have any information to
How?
share.
What did you vote for? On July 2nd, I believe it was? You voted in a late-night meeting that was polled almost certainly, first of all, to keep Mr. Jones able to get a payout when he left, because you want him to shut up and you want him to be paid off
That's
to do
not
that.
at all what
Yeah, it
I
was.
voted for.
Because
No,
by
it's
that
not.
point, you knew he was taking another job. If he left his
Are
contract...
you asking me a question, or are you
Yeah.
telling me why,
I
what
know
I
why that
decided?
happened.
You do not, because that's
So-
not true.
No, I know what that resolution did.
Okay, so is there we don't have any other information at this time for
Yeah,
you?
we're being lied to. We're being lied to. That was
Mr.
supposed to
Schultz.
end with you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak about the consent agenda? No?
No. I mean, I have a comment about the consent agenda, but
Okay,
that, after we read it.
all right, we're ready.
Item A, minutes for the September 17th, 2018 council meeting. Item B, an appropriation of VML Insurance Programs grant of $2,000, second of two readings. Item C, an appropriation, the 2017 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, $25,033, second of two readings. Item D, an appropriation, Victim Witness Assistance Program Grant for $257,024, second of two readings. Item E, an appropriation, FY 2019 Transit Grant Funds in the amount of $707,657.64, second of two readings. Item F, an appropriation, the Virginia Housing Solutions Program Grant Award in the amount of $484,785, second of two readings. Item G, an appropriation, VDOT Primary Extension Paving Project Funds in the amount of $31,441, first of two readings. Item H, an appropriation, insurance reimbursement for fire truck settlement in the amount of $89,369.91, first of two readings. Item I, a resolution, transfer of funds for citywide sign and street survey in the amount of $142,500, first of one reading. Item J, a resolution, CIP transfer from fueling station projects for fleet shop improvements, $380,000, first of one reading. Item K, a resolution, approve the revised role for Charlottesville Area Transit Advisory Board, first of one reading. Item L, a resolution, transfer of funds from the SIA fund to the form-based code account in the amount of $40,707, first of one reading. Item M, a resolution, appointment of interim clerk of council, first of one reading. Item N, an ordinance, create a permit parking zone in Belmont, second of two readings.
Should we make a motion?
Mayor Walker, if I may make one comment, it's a request, but it's related to item K, the approved revised role for the Charlottesville Area Transit CAT Advisory Board. And I would like to request that that adopted resolution be forwarded to the Regional Transit Partnership for review and comment, and we're both on that board. That was a request made by the chair, and I think it's very constructive. So is that okay with the council?
So we had our subcommittee meeting last week to come up with the agreement, the county-city agreement. I think the county's request for is just to make sure that they have representation
Right.
on the board. So
And I did get a request from Chair McKeel to just get a copy of the resolution when we pass it.
Okay. So
So
you
that-
don't want to pull it?
I don't want to pull it,
okay.
I just wanted to make that request, and if that's okay.
Yes.
We'll just do that, but I don't need to pull it. But thank you for the update.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as written.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Oh, that needs to be, okay, you got it.
Get one more hit, one more time.
All right, it carries 5-0. All right. Wes, do you want to read the proclamation now?
So, just for clarification, we have a proclamation for Ms. Maybelle Kinney, who is a resident of West Haven, who's matriarch of the community. She's not able to make it due to some transportation issues, but I know she's watching. So, Ms. Maybelle, we have the proclamation for you. We love you, and we will do it for you at our next council meeting. And we'll make sure we have transportation for you all squared away. I just got the text, so rest assured, we'll keep you straight. Can we still give Ms. Maybelle a round of applause that she's still watching? And Ms. Maybelle, we will have it for you on October 15th, okay? So we'll see you here. We love you lots.
All right, thank you. All right, now we have community matters. Okay. That's not here either. Yes, that's one. Oh.
So a few follow-up items.
So Mr. Murphy is going to give responses from the
From our-
last meeting.
September 17th meeting. There was a request for follow-up with Ms. Carmelita Wood of the Fifeville Neighborhood Association regarding some CAT routes. John Jones from CAT did follow up with her about some rumors that there was going to be some cuts to that neighborhood, when in fact we're going to be increasing Route 6 in that neighborhood and making some changes to Route 4. Ms. Parker pointed out some ongoing issues with some reflectors that need to be added at 8th and Main. There is a work order in for that. We haven't had any crews out for striping because it's rained every day, every work day for 2 weeks. Tanisha Hudson spoke at the last meeting, made a request for information about tax receipts prior to urban renewal and present day. We did contact Ms. Hudson There's not really a responsive record to her exact request, but we did indicate an interest in helping her do the research, and we're waiting to hear back. Mr. Signer asked a question about the monies that were given to the Legal Aid Justice Center last year, and they wanted to let us know that with those dollars, they conducted Know Your Rights trainings focused on how to respond if confronted by ICE at home, work, or in the public. They held clinics to assist local DACA recipients as they rushed to renew their status in the wake of President Trump's decision to wind down that program. They helped families fill out power of attorney and make other preparation in case a parent or parents were detained by ICE, and provided legal support to other organizations and coalitions that serve immigrants, including in the formation of a local ICE hotline and through legal analysis and testimony regarding the legal framework for local cooperation with ICE in the ACRJ.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get that in writing from them?
I have it in
Yeah,
email.
perfect.
I'm happy
Great.
to
Thank you. I'm
forward it
glad.
to you. Yeah, that's
a great account.
my
Thank you.
notes from the email.
Thank you.
Ms. Galvin asked some questions about the development of a business regarding flash freezing. You all have seen under separate cover an email about that project, which was underway back in 2014 as a concept. Eventually, lack of space and the $6 million in startup capital caused folks to consider other options, and that is not currently actively a project. Ms. Carpenter spoke a bit about our voucher program, and based on the information that we've received from CRHA, we're not aware of anybody turning their vouchers back in, but we are waiting for the quarterly report from them. So we should be able to continue to update that. We can say from the 21 households that we knew of at the time of this report who had used their vouchers successfully, it did take them an average of 55 days to secure a unit. So there is a stock issue for sure. Want you all to know that if somebody is not successful using the voucher in the first 90 days in the city, they do have the possibility of an extension for an additional 90 days to broaden their search out. So it could, we do offer up to 6 months time should people need that long. Myra Anderson gave some comments about Region 10, and I know that you all had some back and forth with their staff. I wanted you to know that I did meet with the executive director and the board chair today, and had that scheduled for some time. They are happy to come in and talk about how they can be a good partner in the community. As I suggested last time, I think there's 2 ways that we can tackle that here. Region 10 already comes every year for kind of an annual report, and they could stretch that out to give this some more time, or this may be more appropriately dealt with in a work session. And I know you all have busy calendars for work sessions, but I think that would allow you to also consider the work of the MAP report and the Mental Health and Wellness Coalition, and more globally what we're doing in the way of diversity and inclusion in both health and behavioral health. So leave that to you to decide what's the most appropriate format, but they are willing, eager to come in and talk more about that issue, about diversity of staff.
Mr. Murphy, may I ask a
Sir.
question on that before you move forward?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, in regards, there's been a lot of email traffic going back and forth. Just for the sake of transparency, there's been a lot of conversations between counselors and Ms. Anderson. I've had some conversation as well as representatives from Region 10. One of the things that came up was the Sankofa Center and how that demised for a variety of different reasons. Was one of those issues funding, but they just weren't able to fund the Sankofa Center to keep it going?
I think that that's accurate. You know, you're aware that I did respond to
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Anderson. And my recollection is simply not necessarily as a city staff person at that time. I happened to have been on the board of directors for Region 10 back at that time, both at the point where Region 10 decides to start the initiative and fund it and house it at MACA, and a few years later when they decide that, you know, they're not seeing the numbers that they want and that they're no longer going to fund it. So I think it's a combination of funding and utilization, as I recall.
Right. So one of the things that I would be interested, and potentially this could be another topic for council, but based on what we've heard from members of the community, specifically during the last meeting in regards to individuals seeking, specifically African Americans and people of color seeking mental health assistance, and if that was one of the reasons in which there potentially was a drop, a reason in which the Sankofa Center was closed, and if funding is also an issue, being that there is now, I think, a much heightened desire for African Americans to see African American counselors and psychiatrists and/or psychiatrists. If we have money or funding in our equity account, would it be plausible for us to explore whether or not we could use some of those funds to potentially supplement reopening the Sankofa Center, or exploring what it would take for us to get that initiative back on the ground, back up and running?
I would say certainly it's a good possibility. I would
Obviously,
say,
a meeting with Region.
yeah, I would say that, you know, if you get the big picture of all the services that are out there in the community, you'd want to look at a couple things: diversity of staff, cultural competence training for staff, and that you want to look at all of the levels of different clinical services when you're determining kind of whether there's diversity in that workforce. And I would just encourage us to think about if the only measure, if this is a pass-fail about psychiatry, right, and if we look at the huge lack of psychiatry resources nationwide,
Right.
And then take that down and look particularly at psychiatrists, you know, who are just African American, and whether they might decide to come to Charlottesville when they can command much different salaries in a different marketplace, or, you know,
Right.
or not be willing to look at other resources if we're particularly looking at kind of medication management, and I think we should look at then psychiatric nurses and other resources. So the chances that Charlottesville is going to necessarily recruit a psychiatrist of particular demography is unlikely. You know, every time we look for a psychiatrist of any type, it is extraordinarily difficult. So I think you want to look across all behavioral health resources when you're looking at what you're hoping for in diversity of mental health resources.
Understood. I'm just thinking, I feel like this is a similar conversation in which we have in regards to recruiting African-American teachers, and how sometimes we hear, well, there's difficulty recruiting them. They may not want to come because of the area. They can go other places where they can be paid and so forth. But then I think the question has to then be turned around into what can we do as a community, and then specifically as this body, as a council, to become more enticing, or to entice individuals of this specific demographic to come to our city and join our community resources like Region 10. So I think it would be plausible to believe that if there was, in fact, a Sankofa Center, and we were to say that we're willing to do a variety of different things, whether that be higher wages, housing stipends, whatever the case may be, I'm just literally throwing out ideas, to attract this specific population of psychiatrists and/or mental health specialists to fit this specific need from the community, from a specific demographic that we've been desperately hearing the need for it. I would love for us to explore it. Now, also in full transparency, I haven't had this conversation with Mr. Murphy. We didn't talk about this at all, so I know I'm just kind of throwing it at you today, but I do think it's something that I would love for us to explore, because somehow, some way, we got to figure out how we can get more black psychiatrists
Sure.
to come here.
I think that it's important to have a community plan about how to diversify behavioral health resources. I would just say, in fairness to educators such as yourself, if we count the raw number of people who become psychiatrists versus educators, and the
right.
road to psychiatry being minimum probably 11 years post high school, it's
Right.
a very, very small pool.
Right. Okay.
So, Mr. Murphy, I mean, related to what Councilor Bellamy is saying, I have no problem with that this discussion being part of a work session that you first offered, because it would be in keeping with that topic area. I don't know if the rest of the colleagues feel.
No, I support it.
So
And-
with your instruction, then I will be happy to ask Ms. Brazelton to work with your calendars? Okay.
And I do have one comment or question, request with regards to the vouchers, because I believe at the last meeting, and I followed up with an email, when Anita Morrison presented to us with her housing needs assessment, she did indicate that one of her findings was the CRHA had established its HUD fair market rates for rentals at the 2016 level, and they should be set at the 2018 level. And that difference means that our vouchers cannot be used for units that are being built today that are at 80% AMI. They're too high, and our vouchers are set too low. I just would like to get an absolute confirmation. Is that really what's happening? And is that having an impact on the ability of our clients to use the vouchers?
I know Dr. Pethia is certainly here
Okay.
later this evening, but we will do some follow-up
Thank you.
and message that out to council right away, and also follow up with the public next time. Only other item I had, Madam Mayor, was a question from Dr. Bellamy to the city attorney regarding any insights about blight, particularly with regard to the landmark. And so I know that Mr. Blair has researched that and can make brief comment.
Sure. Spotlight, there does need to be a finding of endangering the public's health, safety, or welfare. Concerning that, aesthetics have never been found by a court in Virginia
Right.
to constitute health, safety, and welfare. So what process that would need to occur is that the NDS staff, perhaps with assistance from an outside consultant or someone of that nature, if they need it, have to prove in some way that there's a structural deficiency that would in fact either violate code or present a danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. If that's found, then then the owner is provided a 30-day opportunity to provide their own plan to abate the blight. If they don't, at that time, council can then pass an ordinance to declare the property blighted. I know the speaker at the September 17th meeting mentioned the idea of acquiring the property. The council, if in fact the council did declare the property blighted and the owner did not abate the blight, one option the council has is to acquire the property by eminent domain. But again, that's a fair market value price that would have to be provided for the property itself if the council looked at that. Again, another option is the council itself could pay to have the blight abated and then have what is in effect the equivalent of a tax lien placed on the property.
So one of the items I'm interested in, and I think I may know the answer, but just for the sake of the public, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2 years ago when there was a windstorm of sorts, and there were items literally falling from the landmark onto the mall, and then there was some, wraparound that was done to try and patch it up. But would that be considered enough for us to deem this building blighted, and for us to pursue other avenues in regards to possibly acquiring this building or property, excuse me?
Well, what can I, Mr. Blair, I
Sure.
just want to interject one point, which is I'd caution us not to be too forthcoming about legal analysis that could benefit us, but that also might disadvantage us if this ever did proceed to
Indeed.
to the law. So that, and we went through this at length,
Right.
2.5 years ago when that happened, and just in your advising us, I know that you'd be cautious anyway, but
Point well taken, Mr. City.
But if I might add, the very scenario that Mr. Blair described was the very series of steps that we
Exactly
took
what
2
led up
years
to it.
ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why the wrapping of the plywood happened, was because it was blight mitigation. So we have done that.
All right.
And to your question, Dr. Bellamy, once the blight is identified, the property owner does have to have an opportunity to abate that blight
Right.
themselves. So whether it's loose materials or some other aspect of the property, before the council would take action, there does have to be an opportunity for the property owner to abate the blight that's
And
identified.
essentially, by all means, he's abated the blight.
Right.
Well, I think it's still good for the public to
Sure.
hear that in regards
Thank
to
you.
where we are with the landmark.
Thank you. All right, next we have Community Matters. First up is Jeff Fogel.
Good evening, my name is Jeff Fogel, I live in Belmont. I wanted to discuss a couple of matters about the police department because they never discuss it and you never discuss it. Several months ago, the new police chief was in front of you telling how she was going to enhance the process by which the department was going to handle civilian complaints. And indeed, they were going to reduce the time period from 45 to 30 days. On Thursday or Friday, I received a response to my complaint of June 18th, 90 days later, saying that the officers were all exonerated. Ms. Katrina also received a similar letter last week. Everybody's exonerated or not sustained, whatever, just thrown out. The rules of the police department require that the internal affairs officer explain the underlying justification for the findings. No such explanation is given to either of us. I pointed this out. Mr. Murphy knows this. Mr. Blair knows this. I've shared this all with them. Nobody's done anything. I wrote back saying, well, what's your underlying justification? And pointing out the specific provision of their rules that requires it. No response. No response whatsoever. It's a dead hole over there. And that's very concerning, and of course it leads to the proposition that we're not getting an enhanced internal affairs bureau, we're getting actually a worse one. And it points to the need for us moving on the Civilian Review Board as fast as is conceivably possible. Because the other issue is the issue of stop and frisk. And I take it by now you all know that the department is no longer keeping statistics in a manner that can be extracted from their database. And if you look back at as I did, and you might, I don't know whether you're interested or not, because most of you have not been interested in this subject, at the presentation that was given to you by the interim police chief, and there were two responsible people for that presentation. It was Mr. Murphy and the interim police chief, whose name I can't remember. And in that memo, it says that they were working to enhance the process of examining, researching, and dealing with the stop and frisk issue. Well, in fact, what was happening was they were dismantling the process by which we could look at it. And nothing has ever been done, Mr. Murphy. You were there, you should have been following up on it, and you didn't. And therefore, the police chief did nothing, the subsequent police chief did nothing, and now we're told you cannot get access to any of that material. So after 5 years of struggling to get something, because several of you have been on the council during this period of time refusing to do anything, refusing to say anything. When we finally got you to say something, nothing happened. And that's still going on. Now, let me just point out one other thing I have to. This was a shocking revelation about Chief Thomas being paid $135,000. He didn't volunteer. There's only two possible reasons for giving him that money. Number one, he was forced out. He was told, here's your $150,000, get the hell out of town. The second reason is, here's $150,000, keep your mouth shut. We still don't know what happened last August. He does. He disputed what Mr. Hafey said. We never heard a word from him. Have you guys actually squelched his voice? And if you haven't, why aren't you reaching out to him? You know where he is. You're paying him $150,000 when he left, quote, voluntarily.
Thank you. Thanks. Are there any comments?
Mayor Walker, I would like to follow up on the question of the data and the stop and frisk. And I want to get a timeline on what's gone on, because I do remember last time we had a conversation about this, the idea, the consensus on the council at the time was that we wanted to have more transparency about that process and more accountability. So I do want to, if we can, get a report from the police chief about where we are, specifically on stop and frisk, the data gathering, and what's being analyzed, what can be released. And thank you.
Oh, okay. Larry Scott.
Good evening, Council. My name is Larry Scott. I live on Holmes Avenue. I'm here today. I'd like to touch on a couple things. One, the housing situation. Renting is very important because everyone cannot be a homeowner. But I really want to talk about being a homeowner, what it meant to me and my family. I went home one day and my wife said Habitat for Humanity were taking applications at the library, and she was thrilled and so happy. And I was sad because I didn't want her to, once my application went in and I wasn't workable, to see the hurt on her face. But like all good husbands, I did what my wife asked me to do, and the rest is history. I've been in my Habitat home now since 2004. And what quickly it done for me was, I look at my daughter, it gave her a stability. It gave her where she can be a kid, where she can go out and play in a safe haven, where she don't have to see her mom and dad struggling for a place to live or had to move in 2 years. If I wanted to build something to my house, I can do it as long as I got the permit and okay from my wife. You know, it belongs to me, you know, and it gave me this pride. I can't explain it to you. You know, I walk with my head up in the air. I should have if I was renting or had nothing, but it just gave me this unexplainable pride. And with pride comes success, you know, and I became a better citizen in the community, steady giving back every day, not because I want to, because I have it in my heart. I'm doing what people done for me. And it's special. It becomes just like getting up, putting your socks on. You know, it becomes natural to walk hand in hand with the community. And also, by me doing the things that I'm doing, people is noticing how other people, the crisis that they're going through. So we have to speak on this. We have to act on this. We just can't sit back and just put our head down and let it continue to go ahead on a down low and not say anything about it. You know, I broke the cycle in my family. My mother didn't rent, I didn't own, her mother didn't own, and I'm a homeowner. I passed this down to my daughter. She don't know what it is to not to own something or to have something, and she could pass it down to her kids. We broke that cycle. We not only pass it down, but she can add to it. You know, it's a very special moment in our house every day when we sit back and look around and see that, you know, we don't have to wait to get the okay to do something to our own home. We can do it, like I said. You know, I just want to say one last thing. I want to thank the council for the support they have given us Habitat in the past, and I want to thank you all for considering us this year. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sally Duncan.
I just want to thank Mr. Scott for sharing that story. Thank you.
Madam Mayor and Councilors, my name is Sally Duncan. I'm an Albemarle County resident and a student at UVA. 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting on Rugby Road, and it let out around 8:30. I just missed the bus, so I decided to walk down to Preston where my car was parked. I walked down Rugby to Grady to Madison. And when I turned on Grady, I was shocked to see how dark the street was. There were no streetlights. I felt very vulnerable and unsafe. And then 2 nights later, a woman was attacked and assaulted in the same spot. It should be the city's responsibility to provide city streets that are adequately lit. The city did a lighting study in conjunction with UVA 2 years ago, and in the zone around UVA, they prioritized the top 10 areas most in need of lighting. The area I walked in had 4 of the top 10 segments. There are several ways the city can prioritize pedestrian lighting. You have a CIP request for city lighting that is coming before you soon, and it needs to be funded. Change the policy for requesting pedestrian lighting. Right now, the policy calls for 100% of property owners to agree to the lights. The safety of pedestrians should not be left to the whims of property owners who may not even be residents, especially when in the college areas, many of them are landlords who do not have the best interests of its renters and the community in mind. 3, change the code that right now doesn't allow light to trespass off a property into the pedestrian area of the street, and it could even go so far as to require new businesses to light the sidewalks. Number 4, apply pressure to UVA. The university has committed millions for capital improvement type projects along the city-university line. They have the ability to help solve this problem. 5, create a priority lighting list. You already have a priority sidewalk list. In a similar way, you can create a priority lighting list and dedicate money to it. I've talked about pedestrian lights because I know they are different from street lights. But a 6th thing that you could do immediately that would be an interim solution would be to order Dominion to install streetlights in the areas the study has determined are important. There's no installation cost for the city for this. There's just the standard monthly rental fee per light. But streetlights are not a complete solution. Our roads need more than tall streetlights. We need lower pedestrian lights and to prioritize where they're installed. I understand that in the long run, this is not a cheap fix, especially considering the dark skies ordinance, but women's safety is more important than stars. I also think it's appalling that even after Hannah Graham was kidnapped off the mall, call boxes have not been installed. If the city can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on police to stand right next to me to protect me, and if the city can spend millions of dollars to install trees on West Main Street, they can prioritize the lighting that will help make its citizens safer. I know that installing the lights may not stop all attackers because it doesn't solve the problem of men, but it would be nice to see them coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Walker, I have a question.
So-
I don't know, I'm experiencing deja vu. I thought that what Ms. Duncan has been asking for is what was being done with our lighting study.
So there is a lighting study, and it was done with UVA and the city. It is a mixture of kind of street lights, kind of the Cobra headlights, and pedestrian lights. Council has previously funded, I think, $94,000 this year, and there's a request next year. And there is a prioritization of sorts in that funding was for 15 lights in the downtown area. As you all are aware, I emailed you and Ms. Duncan today and have asked staff to prepare an agenda memo and bring this back to council. I don't think we can do that by the 15th, but certainly in November. There's a variety that cross both legal and neighborhood development services issues that I want to queue up for you all. I can tell you that the particular pedestrian lighting and the spacing that's recommended and all that is on a scale that's never been considered by the council before, budget-wise. And so just want to, even outside of your CIP process, because I do think that it was an excellent point made by Ms. Duncan today, have you give that some additional consideration before that comes forward. And so it's actually, it so happens that today was the review of the Neighborhood Development Services CIP, and so we would need to develop an additional item if council has some interest in that area. And you know we have a busy CIP for 2020.
But I mean, being that this would be maybe a very expensive expenditure, and being how this affects so many students, I would hope that the University of Virginia will be willing to come to the table and help us pay for some of this lighting. I mean, it affects that specific population. But I mean, to that point, Ms. Duncan, I think you make valued points, and I'm not trying to put like one against the other, but I think oftentimes what also happens is that we hear students or individuals who belong to the university community come and speak very passionately about things that are going on, but we have local residents who've been also asking for similar, and what I would hate to see is that if there's a pecking order of sorts. For example, I hear Ms. Parker, she's been talking about this for a few months now in regards to the lighting for the crosswalk. If it would really pain me, if I'm being completely honest, to see this young lady come and speak eloquently in regards to the lighting that's needed in the specific areas in which you're describing, and for that to be jumped on immediately. And then we've had individuals from the community like Ms. Parker be talking about lighting and lights on crosswalks, and it still not get done. So I think, we just need to make sure we keep that in mind in making decisions.
All right, thank you.
I would like an update, I guess is what
Yeah.
and you're going to provide that, so. And my understanding was
November.
Pat Hogan and Mr. Jones previously had agreed in some maybe informal way, but there was an agreement that this would be a joint effort on the part of the university and the city. But again, that's something to be confirmed, but both of those people are gone.
And that was my question, is that what conversations have and what can we plan on happening with the university? Because I do think there's going to be interest there, and I
And
just want
maybe
to,
we can have it at PAC.
I mean, we can raise it at PAC.
The PAC, yeah.
Could be. I would say Mr. Hogan is still here for this year,
Oh.
right? And that the dollars that the university has committed thus far for safety purposes was really, while it's not to the exclusion of other locations, I think it was intended for the West Main Street project. So that could certainly be revisited.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Carey?
Mary Carey, city resident. Welcome back, Mayor, to the United States of whatever. So, what I like to say tonight is I sit back there and took a lot of notes here, because every time I come, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But anyway, Ms. Gavin, I'd like to know what you meant by resurrecting Second Street project. You talked about it on the radio, you put it in the paper, because Mr. Woodard don't want to build over there. Why should you be concerned about it? So you got people around here in Charlottesville that need places to live, and all of a sudden y'all got this redevelopment thing going on for public housing and low-income people, which you had that going on back in 2002 also. And it was supposed to have been up and running by 2005. This is 2018. What are y'all gonna do about what's going on now? That's what I'm talking about. So, talking about the voucher program, I see where you said that the rates for the voucher program is not high enough for the rents. I wonder why that is. Because you got a lot of people coming in from other places, bringing their money, staying a couple years, and you, Ms. Gavin, is helping to build all these hotels and these affordable housing for rich people, Ms. Hill, and you're not doing anything for the people that's working to keep the city rolling. You don't pay them enough, they don't get enough wages, they don't have anywhere to live, and Mr. Scott, he just got a house from Habitat, which they fit in wherever they can get in. They take down the value of black people that already have property, already have houses already built up, they already have property. They come along and want to buy this little bit of land that might be this wide, and they put 2 houses up in there. You go around Charlottesville, it's so cluttered. It's so cluttered. You can't even go to the bathroom without your neighbor 2 doors down the street hearing it. That's how close these houses are being built. Is that the way redevelopment's going to happen? I don't know. But I'll see if I'm here long enough. Because I know when I first heard it, it was CRHA back in 2002. It would be on Levy Street and Garrett by 2005. So, I mean, y'all make a lot of promises, but you can't put through unless it's concerning the University of Virginia. Now, I know for a fact that when it was snow on the ground and the kids couldn't even get from their houses in the city to the bus stop because of the snow, what did your little city engineer man come in here and say? We are so proud of our workers for clearing off the university, up there at the university, clearing off the streets and the walkways for the students. And here you had kids in Charlottesville that went to Charlottesville schools, couldn't even get down to the bus stop because nobody had cleaned the streets. So now what you gonna do, put some lights up there? I sympathize with the lady, Miss Duncan, sympathize with her. But y'all gotta start taking care of the city.
Thank you.
And y'all gotta start taking care of the low-income people too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Louis Schultz, are you coming back up, or was that your time before because you're on this as a, okay, all right. Garrett Trent? Hello.
I'm Garrett Trent. I live on 12th Street. I'm ceding my time to Nasir Sumter.
I see you.
Hi, my name is Nasir Sumter. I'm a city resident, and it would be an honor if you gave Habitat the money that they needed to help families, because Habitat helps families buy homes. When we first came to Habitat in 2012, I was glad because I knew my family could have the stability that we needed. Owning a home is Owning a home is important for families to have their own legacy. I'm happy that my mom is the first homeowner in our family.
He's looking for you.
Outstanding, Nasir.
Louisa, he's looking for you. Thank you. Richard Tremblay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Richard Tremblay. I'm a member of the Charlottesville Habitat Board of Directors. I'm speaking on behalf of the board in support of the allocation of $585,000 in affordable housing funding for Habitat for this current fiscal year 19, as recommended by the Housing Advisory Committee and your staff. The three specific uses that are proposed as part of this funding are detailed in the staff report and Habitat's application, so I won't touch on that. I'm a volunteer, one of the many volunteers that helps build these homes and renovate Habitat homes. So I've had the opportunity to see the benefits of home ownership, working alongside the Habitat, the future Habitat homeowners when they're doing their equity, sweat equity work, seeing them and meeting their families at the dedication ceremonies, and then having interaction with them after they become homeowners in the neighborhoods. And so I've witnessed firsthand, the many uplifting benefits of home ownership to these families, many of whom have experienced generations of poverty. Among these benefits are building wealth and equity in their homes. Secondly is the pride and joy that's obvious from home ownership. Everything that comes from a safe and stable home for raising a family. Living in close proximity to work and to schools is a big benefit. And finally, having a greater level, as a homeowner, having a greater level of involvement in the broader community and also in their particular neighborhoods. Habitat appreciates everything the city has done and is doing to support our organization, increase the supply of decent, safe, affordable housing in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Katrina Turner. I'm sorry. Okay, you're next, okay. Peter, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Skipped the line. Okay, that's okay. How are you?
Great. Good evening, everybody. Good
evening.
Yeah, so Sean Tubbs is going to come to the second session to talk about the summit with the county later this week. That's pretty exciting opportunities there and work to do. I'm going to talk about some more local type stuff during my time here. First of all, I want to acknowledge and give an invisible high five to the city staff for getting the pedestrian bridge at McIntyre Park on the ground, so that's exciting. And we're going to have a heck of a party when we can cut the ribbon on that and maybe get the track team to do a 40-yard dash across it or something. Get some of you in that race too. Speaking of kids running, I wanted to let people know about my favorite foot race of the year, which is the Clark 5K. That's this coming Saturday at 8 a.m., and then there are kids' races to follow. Really great. And in the same day, same morning, same spirit is another event that seems pretty exciting. So after the pilgrimage, I thought to myself, well, what kinds of smaller sub-pilgrimages could we have in the area? That's almost a bucket list thing. What could people do every year or every month or even every day or every week? Well, the Clergy Collective is leading a walk from Charlottesville to Monticello also on Saturday. Now, the timing is such that you could do both of those things, and I think you should. That's what I'm going to do. So they're gathering at the Jefferson School at 10, and you could also pick it up at Sojourners at 12, and then they're walking to partway to Monticello, taking a bus in my least favorite segment, and then getting back on the Monticello Trail and finishing the walk. So that's Saturday. A week from Wednesday, so not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, is Walk to School Day. And all of the schools are having walk to school events with food and fun and prizes. You can talk to your school or your PTO to find out more about that. And then on October 17th, the Planning District Commission is hosting an open house about the long-range transportation plan. And that's important. That's our regional transportation planning process. And also within that is the first look at the bicycle pedestrian plan for the region. I think there will be an announcement about that in the next city council meeting, but I don't love the sort of 2 days notice thing. So I'm letting people know that's October 17th, and I have flyers for all of you. And that's it. Thanks, you.
Or did you have something else to share?
Just super quick, wanted to let you know that we're working to have Charles Brown come to Charlottesville. And he's had to reschedule, unfortunately. That's going to be pushed into November. But I'll let you guys know with plenty of advance notice. But you can clear the October 29th date from your calendar if it's on there. So we'll be back in touch.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Katrina Turner. Thank you.
Katrina Turner, Charlottesville. It's kind of funny that you talked about a proclamation for domestic violence, because this is the case of my son, and I'm just wondering why he was not believed that night. if everybody has a right, you know, why was my son not believed on that night that he called for help? This is a case, as I said, my son called for help. On the night of my son's arrest, the officers claim to have seen the supposed victim running down the stairs yelling in fear of her life while my son was still on the phone calling 911. So I want to know how the officers saw the supposed victim when they arrived almost 10 minutes later to the scene. So that's one of the things that has changed, because it's no longer that they saw her running down the stairs in fear of her life. It's now what I testified to in my home to then Internal Affair Brian O'Donnell, that the only way they could have seen her running down the stairs if they were standing right outside the door when my son was on the phone calling 911. That has never been explained on how their story changed that night from when my son was arrested. I'd also like to know how an officer is allowed to assault somebody. We file a complaint on them. Officer Hickey was accused of racial bias, excessive force, nonfeasance, demeanor, and untruthfulness, lying, but he was able to testify in court while he was under investigation himself against my son. And that's how my son got found guilty, because of what Officer Hickey said. I want to know why my son was arrested, period. They have believed everybody else except me and my son. People that weren't even on the scene, they have believed in this case. Chief Brackney also has called me a liar. Chief Brackney has written me a letter and she told me that I lied on Officer Hickey. She didn't tell me how I lied on Officer Hickey. And I want to know what she's talking about. One, Chief Brackney also told me there was a videotape in my son's case. For over 2 years, we've been told there was no videotape. Where did the videotape come from? There's a lot of discrepancy in this case. A lot. And somebody needs to reopen this case up, because I'm telling you all now, records have been changed, and I'm telling you all now in front of everybody, in front of these cameras, records have been changed in my son's case, and I can prove it, but they will not give me the information I need. Everything they are telling me I lied about when I testified, I want to know what they claim I lied about in order for them to go against me and my son. I watched what those officers did while my son was handcuffed the whole time. There's no explanation as to why they threw him against the wall, as to why they threw him against the police car, as to why they threw that set of keys and hit him in the head. And that's what she lied about, said that I testified that those keys injured my son. I never said that.
Okay, thank you.
So something needs to be done about this police department. And I just want to know if you all are going to allow this information to come forward.
All right, Ms. Beard.
Wow, I just talked about records being changed in the police department, and nobody is concerned about that. I've been saying it for over 2 years that records have been changed in my son's case. If I am lying, why has nobody ever come after me yet?
So,
Wow, and
you wanna say
nothing, nothing.
what you said in
Ms.
the
Beard,
email?
hold on for a second. What did you say?
You want to share what you said in the email?
No, I already sent it to her.
To accuse the police
Okay.
department of changing records and nothing be said? Wow.
So I sent you an email from the
I know.
information that I have at this point. So I don't have any new information, if you want me to share that with everybody, but I sent it to you. All right. Ms. Beard?
I'm Gloria Beard, resident of Charlottesville. I don't have no bad news today, because I done heard enough already, Lord mercy. This is for you, Mayor. We want you to know that we appreciate you and all you do for this city. And the rest of you too. I was glad to hear that y'all gonna start a project over there at Crescent Hall. I heard that you got the land, and just a matter of getting the contractors. Am I right? I was so happy. Please don't let me see it in my lifetime, though, you all. I've been here 44 years. So, Mayor, to show you my appreciation and a few others, I was hoping it'd be more, but that's okay, as long as we the ones that's here. Can you come down and get your little gifts we got for you now? Connie is out of town. Her son had a doctor's appointment, plus she's losing her mother. You know, raised her. So hers is on top. And Olivia put these names in here, who these flowers are from.
Okay. Well, I appreciate
You two
it.
different people. And
Thank you, Ms. Beard. Just really quickly in regards to your question about Crescent Halls. For those who are not aware of what Ms. Beard is talking about, very excited to share that the Housing Authority, with the help of Mr. Vernon Collins, of FAR, as well as several other community members, Ms. Rosia Parker, who's sitting in the front, Ms. Johnson. There's a litany of community members who have worked with the Housing Authority on a redevelopment committee for the first time, and well, we won't harper on that, as Mr. Collins told me not to, but we have finally moved forward in regards to one of the first steps for redevelopment. A RFP has been awarded to Riverbend Development. Riverbend is the partner in which the Housing Authority will be working with. There have been a site that's been targeted, so two sites, excuse me, both Levy Avenue as well as First Street, South First Street. So the goal is for residents at Crescent Halls, who are our first target area, to be moved out of there and onto these two new sites in which we're looking to develop, we being the Housing Authority. This is a huge step. There's been a great deal of conversation in regards to redevelopment, and I shared this at the Housing Authority meeting. I remember having a conversation with Delegate Toscano on a panel, and he said that how does housing redevelopment, the conversation began in 1991. I was born in 1986, so nearly 25 years ago, this conversation was started. But this Housing Authority Board and this council, and this FAR and this this redevelopment committee was able to get it done. So please be on the lookout for more information in regards to next steps. But again, this is a huge, huge accomplishment for not only the Housing Authority, but for FAR, but most importantly for residents of our community. So major kudos to everyone who's been involved with this work.
And I would just like to add to thank you to people who worked on it for years and decades, who have done the work that have led us to this point, because this doesn't happen with just one group of people or at one time. You build on the work that people have done in the past. So I just want to say thanks, for the collective efforts and the persistence.
I echo that, Mayor Walker.
Thank you. Randy Rogers.
didn't bring flowers. Hello, my name is Randy Rogers. I'm a resident of Albemarle County, but I'm here today on behalf of JABA, Jefferson Area Board for Aging. I'm the manager of community services there, and I've come to, thank you all for your support for JABA over the years, and especially right now. And I'm here to tell you about one of the programs you help make happen, and that is the Insurance Counseling Department. The Insurance Counseling Department is part of a federal SHIP program that provides people on the ground to give you non-biased help with Medicare. It's rather important to have that there because there's so many people trying to give you rather biased advice on your Medicare. But we're there with counselors to help people set up their Medicare when they first start out, to help them throughout the years as they have problems with it. And then our busiest time of the year is coming up in just 2 weeks. Open enrollment for Medicare Part D, the prescription part of Medicare, comes around every year, October 15th, December 7th, and that's when people get a chance to change their plans for the next year. Washington Post a couple years put out an article saying 87% of Medicare beneficiaries are on the wrong plan for them. We're there with counselors to help them out because here's what's important. Somebody will come up to me, I had a guy come up to me one time and said, I've had the same plan for 10 years. And I said, no, you haven't. You've had 10 different versions of that plan because every year the insurance company, and every insurance company, changes parts of the plan, what the premium is, what the deductible is, and what most importantly is the formulary. And so that means what drugs are covered, what drugs are not covered, what the tiers are, what the prices are at specific pharmacies change every year. And we get calls in January and February from people who did not look at their plans saying, I'm standing at the pharmacy trying to pick up the prescription that I've been taking for years with the plan I've had for years, and now they're saying it's not covered. And we go, they're right, and there's nothing you can do about it now. You needed to do something about it in open enrollment. So it's very important that people check their plans every year, and that's why we provide counselors there. Last year, we helped 307 people within the city limits of Charlottesville, and we saved those people $240,000 on their prescriptions. Over the whole region, because we serve the whole region, we saw 1,871 clients and saved them $1.28 million on their prescriptions had they not come and seen us and worked with us. It's a free service that JABA provides. And this year we're very excited. We're going to have an increase to 50 volunteer counselors who are certified by the state to help people look at their prescriptions and their pharmacies and find the right plan that matches them. So, this is a federally funded program. Was that my off button? That was my off button. Okay, sorry. It's a federally funded program, which is great, except that the funds that they give us only give us about 43% of what it actually costs to run the program. The rest of the money comes from grants and private donations and from local governments in the city of Charlottesville. And we're very thankful that you guys help us provide this service to our community every year. And I just want to thank you personally for your support in doing that. Also, if you've got friends on Medicare, it's only 2 weeks away, send them to us. We'll help them out. Where we found out the average person coming to us, 48% of them needed to change plans, and the average person saved $1,500. And that's a lot of money back into people's pockets, especially if they're on fixed incomes.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Nancy Carpenter.
Good evening. Nancy Carpenter, city resident. A couple of quick shout outs. One to the Burley Varsity Club. If you haven't noticed, there is a wonderful two-piece memorialization of African American history in this community. The Black High School that educated both city and county students during Jim Crow, during massive resistance, and up until the schools were integrated. It has a separate statue about Mr. Jackson P. Burley Burley, a very important educator in the black community and businessman, as well as a separate memorialization of students who attended that school. And many of them come to this meeting. Many of them are certainly involved in this community, so it's wonderful. Go see that. Another shout out to the Hate Free Schools Coalition, who with their hard work and in the area of dismantling white supremacy and dismantling systemic racism in the Albemarle County Public Schools is now bringing together both our city school board and the county school board to talk about this hard work. It's about time we sat down at the table and started talking about these issues and not hide from them. They have put their bodies on the line for us, so thank you very much to them. And one housekeeping thing for Rose Hill, where I live, I would like to talk to the traffic engineer in reference to a curve at Henry Avenue and 10th Street, right there where the Washington Park parking lot is. I know that one of my neighbors enjoys having an on-street parking spot there around the curve, but at one time the no parking zone was there pretty much in front of that house and in front of that culvert, but it has been moved up closer to the parking lot. And what happens is when you have two vehicles coming opposite directions, one entering 10th Street from Preston, one coming up Henry towards Preston, you have a bottleneck there if there are two cars parked parallel parked on opposite sides of the roads. We see it sometimes with the school bus coming around the corner, and we also see it if there's the jaunt bus that comes to service some of our neighbors who are in group homes up there. So once again, I'd like for them to revisit that. They've been talked to many times about that by various neighbors throughout the years, but it's as you know, density changes and traffic tries to find the shortest route around this city, they sometimes come, you know, through the neighborhood, and it can be a little problematic. The other thing that I want to talk about is that you're going to be having later this week a combined city-county work session where a housing strategy is going to be talked about, among other things, MOUs, regional transportation plan, blah, yada, yada. But one of the things that I'm looking to see is some housing strategies in regards to creating stability for tenants who are, you know, for renters, for tenants. I appreciated the young man's testimony about stability of being a homeowner and being the son. It's great, but we still need to look at especially an emergency assistance plan for the fund for the county, because there is not one. There are a lot of people that live at Mallside, that are in the county, live at Hearthwood, some other types of Section 8 rentals that are out there in the county, but when they have a problem, when they have a car repair they have to pay, or a unexpected medical expense, or they have, you know, a job that is reducing their hours, there is no real emergency fund to help those folks. So if you can talk to them when you see them later this week about establishing that, it's made a big difference for people who live here in the city that have emergency assistance needs. It would make a big difference for some of our neighbors who are also struggling paycheck to paycheck to have something through the county that would also help. I've written them, so hopefully, I'm sorry I took up more time, but there's a lot to say.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Sorry, Rosia. Yeah, I skipped you too, so we'll wake up at some point tonight.
I'm just going to be short and brief. My name is Rosia Parker, city resident. Mr. Mike, there's been so many different complaints about your police chief. What do you plan on doing to achieve the wrongness, as she says she owns up to her wrong? She's been wrong so many times, and she speaks so eloquently of what she's done, and she hasn't done anything to protect the black community. So you being her boss, I think that needs to be taken care of, rectified, and let the community know what's being done behind that. Two, I've watched so many different mayors come before me in council, but I would like to know, when is the city going to take accountability for the police again? Not looking for Furbia Faye Tinsley, Sage Smith, Quentin Woolfolk, and then also to the state of Sage, for his father to ask a police officer, what's going on with my son, and for the police to react and hit this man, even though it's an ongoing investigation, but I'm not going to talk too much, but to actually watch that when this man asked him about his child and for this police to act in the manner that he did. And as the chief of police say, we police the behavior. So how about the citizens police their behavior? And I'm gonna go back to Ms. Galvin, Mike Signer, and Ms. Hill. I'm gonna go back on what Ms. Hudson said. Do y'all plan on spending the night in West Haven? Because when the news got to y'all didn't have a reply. So I'm gonna look you in your face today and ask for a reply. You breathing hard, I know. But that's how we feel living in West Haven in low-income housing. So I'd like an answer tonight, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Katz.
Sorry that I don't have flowers, but I did want to, I'm here to talk about a couple of issues that are on the agenda that deal with the Belmont Carlton neighborhood, and I'm just wondering how many other people are here from Belmont Carlton? Are there any? Okay, thank you for being here, but I want to say first thank you for listening to residents who are concerned about their homes which border the commercial area, and so that's where the flowers are missing, but thank you, all of you, for listening to that concern. But then the question is that I don't think that when one neighborhood or one constituency is served, that another necessarily loses. Like when we're talking about lighting, for example, that's clearly a concern around the city. And I thought it was interesting that a neighborhood association in North Downtown knew about a grants program and has submitted a request to include lighting, but yet, as far as I know, no one in other neighborhoods have been made aware of the availability of these grant funds. And why would we need to access grant funds to get lighting in our communities? But the real question is about process, and it's about and maybe it's because I'm new to the community, but I think that we don't have a very clear system, as is evident by the fact that there are two people here from Belmont Carlton. There are two issues. One of them has to do with rezoning 1206 Carlton Avenue. And I wonder how many of the residents on Carlton Avenue and in neighboring streets know about this rezoning. And how would they know? And I really don't know what the answer is. And so I'm asking, what is the obligation of developers, of people who wish to rezone? What is the obligation of the city departments and staff when they want to offer services or change services, for example, lighting or some of the other issues? And what is the role of neighborhood associations with respect to issues that affect residents? And I'm asking because I really don't know. And I really don't think this is and I'm sort of surprised as a newbie to a town that was sort of sold to me by my children, who I love very dearly, but nevertheless, I was told it was diverse, and it was progressive, and it was open, and I'm not so sure that I'm getting it. So as far as public hearings, for example, I sort of got thrust into learning about process when a large group of residents of Belmont were threatened with blasting, and I learned that there really isn't a very clear obligation of developers to notify residents of their plans. And and public hearings are not public hearings in the sense of being opportunities for people, for parties who are involved in a question to come together and discuss benefits and consequences, but instead they're a part of a civil process like this. And this is not a public hearing. It's really a part of, it's a civil process. It's a meeting, but it's not a public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
I could summarize some of those things, but I'm afraid I might say something wrong, at least about the general process that we do follow when there are, like, for example, for this case, a rezoning. There's a certain radius in which all residents are notified. There's a posting. I was at the site today for 1206. There was a large sign that just says what's coming up. And I know that we do try to leverage the neighborhood associations, and there's a requirement that neighborhood associations are met with, as well as a community meeting takes place for certain things. And I know that special use permits are included in that. So I was wondering if I'm saying anything incorrect, if there's more that you would add, Mr. Murphy.
No, I think that's the basics. I mean, Ms. Creasy's back there, and we could go in detail about different types of projects and what sorts of notifications are required. There's newspaper ads and other notifications too, but I think that's the basics.
And a few years ago, some of those steps weren't even in place, but it was by the neighborhoods kind of requesting that there would be more input and opportunities, is where some of those, at least those meeting requirements, came into play. So some of those are relatively new. But it does vary from project to project. And I do think that the role that neighborhood associations plays depends on your neighborhood. Certainly some neighborhood associations are much more organized than others, and kind of have more of a tap into the city and the staff, and the communications that take place in between, and other neighborhood associations just don't have those resources involved. So it's definitely hit or miss depending on where you reside in the city and the commitment that you have from residents to kind of volunteer in that role. That's my experience, at least.
Mayor Walker, may I ask Mr. Murphy something? So before Mr. Jones left, there was an awful lot of discussion that he was going to reactivate the Neighborhood Leadership Institute. That was something that was put in place, I believe, with Dave Norris and Holly Edwards. It was something that used to be run by Ebony Walden, a former planner here in Charlottesville City government. And it was exactly an opportunity for the community to learn about all the different parts of government and every department, from planning to economic development to city manager's office. And I thought it was clear that this council wanted to see that reinstituted as part of the community engagement piece that's being written in the comprehensive plan. Can we please get an update on what it would take to actually get that up and running? Because there really does seem to be a thirst for more information and knowledge on how government works and how the community can participate in that. And it can't come in little bites. It can't come sporadically, and some neighborhood associations get it and others don't. There needs to be a real process, and that was what we talked about, and that's what the neighborhood leadership used to do.
Can I ask Mayor for some clarification? So if council's interested in that, I'm happy to work with staff to provide you some details on what that would look like. I would like to know, traditionally that takes one of two forms, and so are you interested in what I would call more of a education for residents about government and exposing them to all of the departments and what they do, or is it more so about a leadership program with the hope that you're training folks to be involved in boards and commissions?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I do believe it was originally intended to be the former, and many of the people that went through the Neighborhood Leadership Institute wound up becoming neighborhood leaders because they were extremely well informed and they knew how to use the levers of government. So I think I don't think they're mutually exclusive. The other thing that I think is missing or needs to come back again is there used to be quarterly meetings between the city manager's office and all the neighborhood associations. I'm going to be very honest. Many neighborhood association presidents told me they felt that it just became kind of a perfunctory kind of a process where they checked the box and they never knew that their questions and concerns are being addressed. I do think we need to reinstitute something like that. I know Mayor Walker's doing her on-site lunches, but I think, again, the meetings between the city manager and the neighborhood associations leadership are a really good opportunity to cultivate partnership so that there is better communication exchange. And that, I know, was the goal anyway with those quarterly meetings. How that actually played out, I don't think it reached its full potential, but I offer those two components, the Neighborhood Leadership Institute and then quarterly meetings. And again, that's your prerogative, but that was what was going on earlier.
Yeah, I'm happy to have council be advised on an email with all the neighborhood association presidents about what their goals for that interaction would be. I would say that they are ongoing. They continue to happen. Problems get raised and resolved. The recent request that went out to neighborhood associations to give us ideas about capital concerns was raised at the last meeting by Mr. Mickey. Ms. Hill certainly attended all of those during her tenure as a neighborhood association president. See other presidents out there in the audience. So it is ongoing, and I'm happy to create an email with the presidents about what it is they'd like to see happen that's different.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I also, Mr. Murphy, just want to raise one other point that came up just to this question, just because a lot of people don't know this. The neighborhood associations vary really widely, and there is no formal structure in Charlottesville at all across neighborhood associations. And I know that with our then new neighborhood development association, Alex Ikefuna, he was surprised when he came here from another city, because in that city, I think in South Carolina, they actually did have, neighborhood associations were nonprofits. It was standardized how they were supposed to exist. Charlottesville, that's not the case. There's civic associations. A lot of the time they have no legal structure at all. Sometimes they don't have a board of directors. Sometimes they meet once every couple months or once every 6 months. Some are more active than that. It really depends on you. It depends on what people do in their neighborhood with their neighborhood association, because it really depends on where you live. It may not provide much information at all. Sometimes the email addresses are out of date. Sometimes there's no Facebook page. So that's how we are right now, and it may be something for another for maybe in the next year for us to think about. NDS has a lot to do, but formalizing the neighborhood association structure, not just having the institute, is something that we could do, because it really depends on where you live, whether it's active, whether it's a good conduit to you or not from City Council.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay.
It's lit.
Three.
My name is Walt Heineke. I live in Charlottesville.
Good
After spending a couple days up in a very gross U.S. Senate building up in D.C., I just wanted to say that I believe survivors. And for all of those people who are watching, and for the 1/3 to the half of the people in back of me and who are watching, we believe in survivors. We believe survivors. And I just want to make sure that that message is a community message. 3 things from what I heard tonight. Mr. Fogel made an assertion about police stop and frisk data. If it's true, and I fully expect you to figure this out between now and the next meeting, if that's true, that somehow the way that data has been collected has been changed once we found out that there's a problem, that's a serious breach in the public trust. That's a significant breach in the public trust, because institutions do this all the time. When they collect data and they find that there's a problem, they change the category definitions of the way things are counted around. And this is a way of hiding and obfuscating the truth. So I fully expect you as a council to fight between now and next meeting to get the police chief in here and find out and report to the public whether or not the assertion that Mr. Fogel has made is actually true or not, and how that is actually working out. We want the truth. Secondly, on affordable housing, I am over the moon with what y'all are doing and what we've heard in terms of positive steps. Over the moon about it. Really, I can't communicate my happiness with what you're doing. My only suggestion is this: your own staff and the Charlottesville Coalition on Low-Income Housing has estimated that we're in the hole on affordable housing somewhere in the number of 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 units, right?
Right.
And so you're making steps. What I'd like to see you do is to think to yourselves about what this looks like in 2023, and say to the public, in 2023, you're making a commitment to X number of units that are going to be produced in this process. We can't stop with little victories. We have to set strategic goals, and we have to say by 2023, this council is committed to X number of units being built in this town. Lastly, I sat in on the Planning Commission Place Design Task Force meeting the other day about public engagement and community engagement. I think it's a disaster. Everywhere you look, whether it's the Planning Commission, the DMC Task Force, or the CRB, everywhere you turn in this community, you hear the same refrain. We do not have effective public engagement. We don't have public input. I just want to encourage you to declare that as a crisis. This is a community crisis that needs to be solved. We're not talking about it at the level of crisis yet. And it's very, very important that you guys figure this out, because there's different ways of defining what the purpose of community engagement and public input is. And at the top of the ladder is empowerment of citizens. You need to rethink about the goal of community engagement as to empower, not to gaslight us, not to manipulate the public, but to actually empower the public. And just the last thing I'll say is the best thing I've heard after I'm doing a study right now with some community organizations, the best thing I heard this weekend was go to the communities who have the connections with the low-income communities in this town, like Black Lives Matter, Legal Aid, FAR. Go to them and ask them, how do we do public engagement? And a survey is good, but it ain't going to cut it, because there's lots of different ways to get to public engagement. And if we're only defining it as a survey, we have a problem. Thank you.
I would say, just very briefly, Mr. Heineke, Dr. Heineke, excuse me. I think your points are well taken. There's a lot of thoughts I have, but just for the sake of time, I'll respond to one. Particular, if we were to, as a city, say that by, to use your year, 2023, we're going to have 5,000 units. One of the reasons why I struggle with that is that because we're landlocked and there's a lot of variables that we can't control, the last thing I feel like our community needs is to promise to deliver on something and then not deliver. And if we were to make an assertion, there was a similar commitment made years back saying that we would, what was it, 15%? Yeah, like we would get to this 15% number, and we found for a variety of reasons, you just can't do it without partners. I mean, to be realistic, like we need to work with the county since they have the land. But to use that example, if we were to say, okay, we're gonna get 6,000 units, and although, as Ms. Carpenter alluded to, we're going to, this Thursday, we're having a joint meeting. If we say to the county, we want you all to make sure you partner with us. Let's figure out how we can get some of that land. Let's work together. You all have a housing need. We have a housing need. And if they say, no, we don't want to work with y'all. Y'all are crazy, right? That severely strangles us, or it kind of creates a situation in which we can't do it. Or if we have developers, as we're saying, we want to create more affordable housing, developers who come in and they just take advantage of the fact that they know we want to do more affordable housing, so they just kind of give us crumbs. I don't want us to be in that kind of situation. I don't think my colleagues want us to be in that situation. So I know we want to get more, and I agree with you. I'm very proud as well that the Housing Authority and others were talking about how we get to more units, but we do have to be strategic how we do it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that.
All right, thanks.
What we can control.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Second Street.
Anyone else? Thank you.
I think that's an option.
Good evening.
All right.
My name is Strad Slocum. I'm a city resident. I wanted to just touch on briefly the issue of water security. Some of you may have heard last week, buried in a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration report, was the prospect of 3.5 degrees Celsius of global temperature rise, 7 degrees Fahrenheit, by 2100. And I just can't overstate how catastrophic that would be if that came to pass. And I know that may not be in some of your lifetimes. It hopefully will be in my lifetime. It will definitely be in our children's and grandchildren's lifetimes. Around the world, there's increasing data showing that a lot of conflict, such as the civil war in Syria, some of the refugee crisis issues in Venezuela and South American countries are caused by drought and instability due to climate change. Yemen may be the first country in the world to run out of water in like the next few years. And so I'm sure you are aware of Dr. Richard Gulick's concerns regarding the Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority and some of the proposed projects, the various pipelines and whatnot. But I don't quite understand some of the points he's making based on the idea that demand has apparently gone down and that reduces the need for a lot of these water improvement projects. But apparently the forecasts for water in the area are supposed to be done every 10 years, and apparently the last one was done 10 years ago. So as we see our federal government basically giving up, at least according to this one report, on addressing climate change, and the prospect for conflict to come here, I believe we got a pass with Hurricane Florence, but it's not if, it's when. And if we're not ready to secure our water supply, we are going to be dealing with conflict far in excess of, August events and other, terrorism type things, racial or not. We're going to have a lot on our hands if we don't look far, far ahead as to how our water is secure. And so I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I get my answer before I leave?
All right. So, Miss, oh, yes.
Kathleen Kahn, Charlottesville. Last council meeting, I brought up the issue of coordinating with ICE regarding immigration, and once those members of our community are brought into the police department or the jail system. One thing that I noted, I've sent this all to you. You may have gotten it by now. Okay. So I don't need to go through it. I'm not going to read it. It's too long. So one of the things that I noted from my previous conversation with you all, Mike and Wes, that you said one of the stipulations, one of the things that you were saying were minor traffic violations. Minor, like driving without a license, driving on a suspended license. First of all, there's only 12 states in the United States that allow undocumented people to have a license. So how is someone getting a suspended license when they're not even supposed to have one? Do you understand what I'm saying? So was that like racial profiling? Oh, I saw you doing this, or you swerved this way, but now you may have a similar name as someone. Or you may have if that person isn't allowed to have a driver's license. You know what I'm saying? So what, do you have any answers for that? Or as far as like, the process, like how we can say, okay, if that is an issue, not having a driver's license is an issue, then how can we fix it to where undocumented people or persons can have a driver's license? So that's one issue we can just take off the board altogether. Do you see?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. Is that, do you have more questions?
No, I just
answer them all
wanna-
at once. It's just that one?
I just want to ask that question.
Sure,
I
so-
mean, you have a whole list of.
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
didn't know if
gonna
you
get
wanted to
into
ask them all first.
Well, no, well, I could.
Yeah, probably
if
best
you-
if you ask them all first,
if
and
you
then I can
like.
try to respond.
Okay, so, excuse me, I'm a little bit tired. So I'm just going to say, a common question I heard, I'm just going to read it. A common question I've heard throughout the Charlottesville community is, why don't they just come here legally? The obvious but not so obvious answer to some is that those seeking asylum lack resources to go through the lengthy and financially straining process while being in immediate danger, fleeing abuse, drug-related violence and/or oppressive government. There appears to be a fine line between which immigrants are accepted with stipulations and are placed by certain community members by certain members within the community and which are not. If they're working jobs which are undesirable to privileged, where they're being exploited and abused, it's okay. But as soon as someone gets pulled over, has a few too many drinks while outside, misses a child support payment, then it's off to jail and next is ICE. This makes I can just stop if you like. Okay. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's perfectly acceptable for an undocumented person to be violated with very few eyes being batted. But once they've encountered law enforcement, no matter what type of community history they've had, their life is over. If they end up in a detention center, their life is over. If they end up returning to their country of origin, their life is over. This should never be a proud moment for the residents in Charlottesville. Should I continue? I just have a paragraph. I mean, it doesn't
Have a
matter.
response.
So, do you want to respond?
Sure.
However you want to do it.
Sure. So the initial question in regards to the driving without a license piece, I don't think that's a question for the jail board, but what I do think that we could do is have a conversation with Joe Patania, the Commonwealth Attorney, in regards to figuring out different ways in which we can have our undocumented brothers and sisters obtain driving permits. I know there's a push right now by Mr. Russ Linden
Yes.
and others to get ID card,
Yes.
identification cards for those who may be undocumented. He's had conversations with Chief Brackney and others. I know he's essentially spoke with all of us on council, and I think that we're all in support. I know we haven't formally voted on it, but I think we're all in support of regards to them getting obtaining identification cards. Now, the driving license piece, again, we would need to speak with Joe Patania, but then I think we also, just processing this, we would need to speak with Department of Transportation.
Right, but did you know that legally an undocumented person cannot hold a license, and therefore a license cannot be suspended?
Right. Well,
Yeah, if I could
I'm
just
saying,
sure, interject
Sure, go ahead.
that,
You're not allowed to have one, it's
you know,
not legally, but it's okay, it's fine.
If there are states that allow folks to get a license without being citizens, I'm not aware of that. I believe you said there were 12.
There's only 12.
It seems to me that that's more of a question for council to get some data and
Yeah.
consider for their legislative packet.
sent you some.
Because it's really a decision by the state. It's not a local decision.
Is Virginia one of those states?
No.
No.
Virginia is not one of those
So
states.
we
There's
would
only
have to.
12.
So we
Do
would
you
have
want
to
me-
petition. No, you don't have to.
Okay, I was
mean,
gonna
with
say,
not
sure.
one.
You have it.
We would have to
Just
send
for
it
you.
to the General Assembly in our legislative packet.
That's right.
Right. And so that would detour, interaction. Like if we're on the verge, or if we're even considering becoming a sanctuary city or a quote unquote welcoming city, then that would be one thing that would, create less interaction with law enforcement and therefore less interaction with ICE.
I think we all agree with you.
Right.
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I agree with you. But the issue is specifically in regards to the driver's license piece. If there's nothing we can do about it locally,
Right.
we would have to try to get our state legislators on board.
Yeah,
Basically,
I just
just
want
for
us to go
information
back and
purposes.
double check the
Thank
jail data, right? And be precise about the charge, because I think that what people are maybe coming into custody for was not a suspended license, but perhaps driving without a license.
Right. And so if
and
we
so
could-
there is some nuance there.
Right.
Dr. Bellamy came in
With
and
or
made a
without.
proposal about maybe a compromise with some of our colleagues on the jail board from other localities. I would kind of submit that my hope would be that the jail board would pass a policy that we don't do any voluntary notification
Right,
of
so
ICE at the back end, regardless of what the crime is.
Right, so a
At all.
good, in the email I sent you, you may have already received it. There are links to city and county. Yes, everybody got it. So there.
Did you send it just to the?
I sent it to the council, the council
Council,
at city.
okay.
And so I've sent information for Alexandria and Fairfax County. Fairfax County has, they put into place resolutions for these types of programs, and they've been updated a couple of times. Now,
Okay,
Chester,
so,
yeah,
we
everything,
will-
all the
okay,
information.
so they'll take a look
Yep.
at it. Okay.
Yep, and codes and all that are there.
All right.
Everything's there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll just say that I do have some concerns still about the ID. So with all of us on board, I do have some reservations about it because it's still a way for people to kind of be tracked. So I just think we have to be very mindful of that. Okay, so Mr. Blair has an update.
And just to the last speaker, I know
Okay.
that last meeting she had asked about state legislation about sanctuary cities. And just to give you an update, there have been 7 bills in the last 3 sessions of the Virginia General Assembly. 3 of them did pass the House and Senate, and they were vetoed by Governor Northam and Governor McAuliffe.
Yeah,
But, right, but there have been 7 such bills introduced in the past.
Oh, no, I'm aware.
3 years.
But it just because it's nothing's, you still have to try. The
Correct.
more you push, the better,
Correct.
the more people are on board. They think there's only 560 sanctuary cities in the U.S.
Right.
So, to even sanctuary, becoming a sanctuary city isn't even a legal term. It's just a political term used to, say, oh, we're giving sanctuary. No, you're helping another human being is what you're doing. You're helping another human being avoid death, ultimately. So, something to look at.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Blair is there. Do you have?
Oh, no, are you done with that?
And additionally, concerning the issue about the contract with the former police chief, there was a settlement agreement that settled an employment dispute back in December of 2017, and the terms of that were agreed to by both parties to be confidential.
So Mayor Walker,
Transparency.
if I may, and I
Was
don't,
he told to shut up? Is he required to keep his mouth shut? Was he required to leave town?
I am not going to go into any more answers of questions because it's getting so late.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that at the next meeting, I will have a response for Miss Mary Carey about West Second Street. I will have a response for Miss Rosia Parker about spending an evening in West Haven. And I will have a response to Mr. Heineke about having a strategy for housing. We do need to be more strategic and utilize every scrap of our land. So I will get back to those 3 individuals next time. It's getting too late though right now.
Okay. All right, break. Thank you. 10 minutes.